Ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Thomas Mjisha, a medical clinic officer professionally, a clinical philosopher, that is one interested in thinking about thinking, wondering about wondering within the cycles of the healthcare systems or the medical fraternity. And then I'm an aspirant to the clinical gerontology section or department. So I'm pursuing a master's degree in mental health counseling psychology with that special interest of gerontology. Well, today I come before us to discuss, share, or make a brief sum up of the periods of philosophy. Well, when we come to the periods of philosophy is most of the time you find that while we think, while we reason out things, while we try to do some simple discussions, sometimes we forget that there are some of our forefathers in thinking whom by different periods they have tried to pass on some intellect, pass on some wisdom onto us, the persons of the modern times or the contemporary times. Thank you. Well, this evening, remember it is a special Sunday, the Vocation Sunday, the Sunday that we celebrate the Christ, the life, the way, the truth, and this is very important. And it reminds me of a great song that Le Seigneur nous a aimés, that the Lord loved us so much. Et puis, along the way he says, car je suis la vie et je suis, I'm the life. Le Seigneur apporte-nous dans ton amour. It's a song that is calling the Lord to carry us in his love. But Christ is truth and we are in the search of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, what is philosophy? Simple question. There are many thoughts, many opinions about philosophy, as there are men. But someone said philosophy is thinking about thinking. Interesting. And someone also said philosophy is all about wondering. But we are thinking about the periods of philosophy. Great. In brief, we have the ancient philosophy, we have the medieval philosophy, we have the modern philosophy, we have the contemporary philosophy, and all these philosophies are very significant and very important. Ladies and gentlemen, we have different personalities that we must think about in these different periods of philosophy. Before I talk about Socrates, who some people believe, maybe they say, that is the founder of thinking, I don't know, we thought before. But before the Socratic thoughts, we have those we call the sophists. Sophists, these were also thinkers. Thinkers that upheld what someone is calling relativism, rhetoric way of thinking. And in this we have great men. There is a great man called Protagoras and there's a great man called Gorgias. These are great thinkers of that time. And all these guys, for them, they brought about a thinking philosophy that always aimed at, bring people to their side. What I can call seduction, if I can use that word. But we are trying to say that we are talking about those that seduce people to their side. I can't use the word seduction, but alluring people to their way of philosophy, their wish and their belief. And what can I say about this great man, Protagoras? Protagoras brings out a thought and he says that man is the measure. Oh, great, interesting. Why is man the measure of the things that are? I'm the measure. What do they mean? If what I've done, I feel it is not evil, then it's not evil. So truth becomes relative. Truth becomes subjective. It depends on the doer. Man is the measure. Ladies and gentlemen, what has this great man, Gorgias, to tell us? And Gorgias also has a great thought. Allow me read what is here. Gorgias is telling us something here that nothing exists. Even if something exists, nothing can be known about it. Even if something can be known about it, knowledge about it cannot be communicated to the others. Can you imagine that? What is he saying? I repeat it for you. Nothing exists. Even if something exists, nothing can be known about it. Even if something can be known about it, knowledge about it cannot be communicated to the other people. What is he trying to mean? Gorgias is trying to speak to us the uncertainty of reality, uncertainty of knowledge. And he's trying to tell us that even this reality, which is fundamental, it cannot be truly known in its fullness because of our limitations in perception, limitations in cognition, and even limitations in our understanding. And trying to tell us there are always challenges of language, all of the means by which we can communicate. I think these two guys have something to speak to us in our healthcare systems as clinical officers, as doctors, as nurses, as VHTs, as whatever. What are they trying to tell us? They're trying to tell us that let us be patient, we center the patient, patient-centered care, that the patient's at the center, understanding that the experiences of this patient are subjective, that this patient undergoes a pain that is subjective, and so we render better care. What can be another thing that we can learn from these guys? We are also learning from them critical thinking. Now, we have past stories. We have past ways of managing our patients, but must we remain within that paradigm? Can we think outside the box? And that is critical thing to say, though my forefathers thought of science to be this way in my management of this condition, but I can manage it outside the box, thinking beyond. Critical thinking. This is what also the sophists can really want to teach us. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish at this moment to bring us to the Socratic, Socrates. And now when we talk of Socrates, we are talking about this man who is practically like our grandfathers, African grandfathers, the village sages. These are the guys that have a lot of wisdom, but their wisdom was not written down. And because it was not written down, or they didn't have someone to write it after their being, then we are trying to say that Socrates' ideas were never put down by himself, but his wisdom is significant. And what has Socrates to tell us? From Socrates, we hear this great knowledge. Man, know thyself. Gnoti seoton. This is what I can say in Greek. But what does this gnoti seoton, man, know thyself? The Latin will actually say the noce te ipsum. And they're trying to bring about the aspect of self-awareness, introspection, and that capacity to know yourself in the depth of being. In fact, this is the journey into self, which is the longest journey. Know thyself. And actually, this is what we can see at the temple of Apollo at Delphi. It was written there, Gnoti Seoton, as you enter into that temple. And it is informing us that we should be aware of our human nature, be aware of our limitations as human beings, and also we know our potentiality to understand, and also perhaps our ignorance in that way. So it is an invitation to self-reflection, personal humility, and personal growth, knowing that we are just the foundation of our own development, and knowing that we are ignorant of certain things. And so, gnoti seoton. How can I bring this into practicality? First of all, in the care of our patients, just know that you are not the absolute of knowledge. You are not the epitome, and you need the other. Just know yourself, know your capacities, know your limitations, and be able to know when can I refer this client that I cannot know how best to manage. And this is very important. Self-awareness and self-acceptance. Anyway, from Socrates, we see a great man, Plato. Plato is actually someone who put down the thoughts, the ideas, the wisdom of this great man, Socrates. And Plato, becoming a disciple, a student of Socrates, if I can put it, he brings about the nature of forms. The world of forms. And what has Plato to teach us much? Theory of forms. He talks about the impermanence of the physical world. He speaks about the importance of education. He speaks about, the allegory of the cave. And these are very important thoughts. You can go and fetch them in his work, the Plato's Republic. And even he writes another important work which we call the Symposium. And in the Symposium we see a lot of things. Ladies and gentlemen, what has Plato tell us about the theory of forms? For him, he believes that there is a certain world, which is not the world of matter that we are in, and he says the truth of things, and also the eternal reality is found there. Actually, in most times when you see philosophical, art, design, and whatever, you don't really see a man, two men. One is pointing up like this, the other one is putting his hand down like this. That one pointing up, philosophically, we are talking about Plato. This one who's just making his hand show down here, we are calling him Aristotle. A clear implication that for Plato, he believes that there is that theory of forms, that world that contains the true reality of things. The truthfulness of things is up there. And it's the world that has perfection, the world in which everything is in its perfection and goodness. And then for Aristotle, he's trying to say, truth is in the things themselves, and we shall delve much into that. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, allow me make a break and say that was the end of part 1 of my thoughts about the periods of philosophy and a few proponents and their thoughts, their ideas within that period. I will welcome you to part 2 of my presentation. Please welcome, don't switch off. I want that we understand, I wish that we understand periods of philosophy together. You and me. Au revoir. Be blessed.